Greetings, this is Ty Brown with AthleticDirectorU. I'm joined today by Coach David Cutcliffe. He's the head coach at Duke, and Coach Larry Kindbom, who's the head coach at Washington University in St. Louis. And our topic today is longevity in leadership. Greetings, gentlemen. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Ty.
Now, between the two of you, in terms of experience, you guys have roughly 88 years of coaching experience in football coaching. That is a significant number between the two of you guys.
Well, I'm glad to have somebody that's my senior by 2 years, and great respect for Coach, and longevity that you said may be the most rare thing amongst all coaches.
Right, and I mean, you combine that with 30 years as a head coach there at WashU, and total as a head coach, 17 years. Those are significant numbers. I really am excited to talk to you guys today about longevity in leadership. First question I'll ask you guys is, you've seen a variety of leadership styles, and I would assume seen a bunch of speakers and read a bunch of books on leadership and how to lead and how to be great at it, how not to lead. Can you give us something from what you've seen over the years that you've read and learned, and then how you've, if you have implemented, changed it, made it your style and implemented in your leadership styles? Coach, I'll start with you.
You want me?
Yeah, go ahead, Coach.
All right. Well, I don't think there is any leadership working with older or younger people, but this is younger people, without relationships. And Ty, what we've used the term for years, engaged relationships. When we say someone has gotten engaged, or two people, that suggests immediately the relationship is serious. So we have built our programs through relationships. I don't think that you can worry about leadership styles until you have trust. And so that's just, you know, I'll stop there, because that's as core as it gets for us. And then, you know, later we will talk about some of the things I think a leader has to do. But if you don't build relationships that have 100% trust, I think you're wasting your time, personally.
Yes, sir. Coach?
I think David said it really well. You know, trust is everything. Everything that we do in our program, that I do in my relationships with my wife and my kids and my players, deals with trust. And as long as the trust is solid, you have at least a foundation to build. So leadership is, obviously if there's leadership, there has to be followership, and part of that really does come down to that person. For whatever reason, I'm going to follow that person with leadership, however you want to describe that word. I have to have something binding in there to me that's going to make me feel like that person cares about me, and I think it's really important that we exhibit that as people when we meet other people.
All right. Caring is an important thing, and trust, and those two things go hand in hand. Establishing trust. When you bring a new coach on staff, or you bring a player into your program, anything, even in an organization, right? You hire somebody on. How have you established trust throughout the years as leaders?
I have a little simple path to that. Say what you mean and mean what you say. I think we violate that too easily. Hey, I'll call you tonight. The phone call's never made. I'll see you tomorrow. There's a million examples. It sounds like such a simple thing to accomplish, and I think young people are really looking for that from mentors, that they can trust and count on. When you say something, it is a way. So I tell an assistant coach, I really don't want to see when you tell a player to stay low, and you say get behind the line, start behind the line, and you let that be violated, you're actually losing trust. That player realizes that, and he really realizes this guy doesn't really care, and he's not all about saying what he means and meaning what you say. So I don't think it has to be that complex. I've read a lot of books, but I think these years teach us a lot, and I think that's been my best path toward gaining trust and being a leader.
Coach?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, ditto. But I also think that along with that then is be what you say. So if I ask somebody to do something that they know in return, they should be able to see from me that I'm also what I'm asking for. So if I'm asking for discipline, that I'm exhibiting discipline. If I'm asking for someone to push themselves, that they can look at me and say, he's pushing himself. And that's where the trust to me is established then, is that say what you mean what you say, and then take it that one step further, and then I'm going to exhibit the same type of behavior that I'm really asking from you in our relationship.
And as leaders, there are times when you may not be able to do what you say. And tell me about, as a longtime leader, how you've had to reconcile that with players who may have felt disappointed, but there's always a reason. The head coach has
Coach,
reasons.
go ahead.
Sure,
it's kind of a follow-up to what you said.
I think, first of all, nobody's perfect. And the people that know me know that my faith is such a big part of what I'm all about. And part of my being able to present that faith to other people is to say, I'm not perfect, and I'm not expecting perfection. So when mistakes are made, I want to be very real about that. And I try to be transparent, be vulnerable. It's hard sometimes because when someone is looking up to you in a relationship, whether it's player-coach, coach-coach, husband-wife, that nobody wants to fail. And the greatest failure is not being real and admit it. So I lead the world in mistakes. And usually when I introduce myself to our team every year, it's like, there isn't a mistake that you can make that I haven't made already. So I'm not going to come up here as a perfect model for what you should be, but the one thing you can trust is that I'm going to do everything I can to do it the right way. And that's what I wish from you. And I think because maybe I position it or posture it that way, that does, again, help build trust. That, okay, he's not telling me to be perfect, but he's being real about it.
And living it, too.
And living it.
I'm going to say this past season, I overcame his lead on mistakes. I've learned more this season in my 43rd year. That's a big part of all of this. I think you hit it right on the head. I think the players see you learn, but I think it's important to point out to them when you've made a mistake. They know it's not premeditated, it's just occurred. Particularly, I think, this day and time, a word that I love, that I think the B part of it is just be genuine. And people know if you're genuine. Nobody hopefully goes in trying to make a bunch of mistakes, but there's a difference in making a mistake and betraying. So I think the B part, I'm going to do some things really poorly, but I am not going to betray you. That's what I view as genuine from my perspective.
Now thinking about when you joined the coaching profession, when you became a head coach, when you started there at WashU to now, how has your style, quote unquote, in terms of leadership changed? It seems like trust has probably been something that you guys have been the whole time, but talk about what you do different now as leaders than you did when you were younger.
Well, I've changed every day, and I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't say that because people want to see something solid, something as a rock. But I've always felt that I've learned more from the people on the other side of that relationship than they're ever going to learn from me, and I appreciate that. I try to gain something through each of the relationships that I have. But I believe that I make just as many mistakes as I used to make, but I also believe that I can work day to day with that other person to let them know that I'm really in their best interest. I'm trying to serve them for the things that I believe, which is my part of leadership, is servant leadership. So in the beginning, I can't say that I was like that, but I can't tell you that there was like one change, one event. It just seems like every day I realize more and more that God has put me here to serve other people, and my coaching position is a mission to me. So how do I serve that other person. And I think that takes you down alleys and roads that maybe you hadn't done before in terms of leadership.
And how you continue to be great, Coach.
Well, that's beautifully said. It is, if you're a leader, you're a servant. I believe that wholeheartedly. I became a head coach much too young at a very high-level high school in the state of Alabama. It just happened. And being as young as I was, you had parents older than you are. And I immediately was a bulldog. I mean, you talk about a strong leader. I thought that's what leadership was, and bordering on dictatorship. And, we were disciplined, we won. Fortunately, I still have some good relationships from those young men, but I think the thing that I've learned the most is that leadership is really training other people to be leaders, whether it's our staff or players. I think if the whole process isn't creating other leaders, then something's going to fail. I mean, there's no way that one person can lead everyone all the time. It's impossible. I thought I could do that as a young high school coach. I look back now and I know how poorly I did that. I wasn't so great early on as a coordinator in some regards in that. And I think if somebody asked us, what's the best thing you've done at Duke? We have graduated leaders, a bunch of them. And they are leading wherever they are, whatever community they're in, whatever occupation they're in. We've graduated a lot of leaders. And then these coaches that I'm fortunate enough to work with, Ty, that's when I sit back and smile, is when I know they can take the reins of anything and lead it.
And again, we're here with Coach Cutcliffe from Duke and Coach Kindbom from Washington University in St. Louis. Coach, I do want to ask you specifically, I think you had a significant medical event in between your head coaching jobs. I wonder how that changed. Did that change your leadership style any?
Well, it changed my life when, I went from one day my chest hurting to the next morning in emergency open heart surgery, complications after that. Those events, I think at that point, my faith's always been strong, but I knew where the center of my life was more than ever. So I think I got through all that, and I knew God had maybe an adjusted purpose for me, an adjusted approach. I had to take a year off from coaching. I learned more watching my incredible wife do what she does with our children, which we sometimes miss. And I was very thankful for good health. I still am. And I think, we always are looking for jobs and looking for opportunities, and, in this profession, I wish more people would understand to hunt your purpose. It's out there. You're not a mistake. God put us here with a purpose. And whatever it is if we can find that purpose. And so I believe that I have a handle on His purpose. I can't fulfill that every day perfectly because I'm not, but there are events in our lives that help us redirect that purpose. And I think that's the biggest thing that I've learned from that. What people would view as a horrible event, it wasn't a lot of fun, I can tell you that. But it's the best thing that now I can say that's ever happened to me in my life.
Well, I have a couple more questions here for you, gentlemen. I'll take that one step further with you, Coach Cutcliffe. You've mentored some great quarterbacks. You've done a lot at a high level, and I imagine since you got the head coaching job at Duke, people probably have been interested in you in other head coaching jobs. What you just mentioned about going through that event and where you are now, I'd imagine that ties into why you figured, hey, I'm serving my purpose here. Why do I need to chase?
100% accurate. Joe Paterno told me many years ago, he said, David, find a head job if you can that fits your personality. And I think, he didn't say it the way I just said it, but what he really meant was find that job, head coaching or otherwise, really, I would tell anyone, that you know you're where you're supposed to be. Your purpose is aligned with the Lord, and I know that. I count my blessings every day that I'm able to be there and do what I do around a bunch of exceptional people. The two of us have guaranteed one thing by having our jobs. Everybody around us is smarter than we are. These students are amazing. So I shouldn't speak for you, but it's about where I'm getting reminded of that regularly at Duke.
Coach Kindbom, now 30 years as head coach. How do you stay relevant? How do you keep yourself relevant with the student athletes? They don't get older, right? Every year you bring in a new crop. They're still the 18 to 22-year-olds. How do you keep yourself relevant in terms of obviously how you lead with trust and care, but in terms of what the players find interesting, in terms of what motivates them every day? Talk to me about that.
It's interesting. As you're asking me the question, I think you gave me the answer. It's the trusting and caring part that keeps you relevant. People are people, and that hasn't changed. David and I were talking earlier that I don't think the millennials, the young people, are entitled. I don't believe that. I don't believe that they're different than they used to be. As a matter of fact, I think an 18 to 21-year-old, and let's face it, that's the group that I've been working with for now 45 years, right? That whole group, they're looking for relationships. They're looking for people that care. They're looking for discipline. They're looking for people that are going to help either push them and sometimes pull them forward. When you spend your time in relationships doing that, I think that does keep you relevant. I think back to and this would have been, and David will know the era, right at the end of the 80s and beginning of the 90s, computers were coming in. And there were a lot of guys that were my age and whatever I was at that point, 38 or 39 years old, and they made a statement about, I don't believe that computers have any place whatsoever in the game of football. And I wanted to have relationships with the kids, and I don't believe that we need to have these, and I didn't know how to respond, because some of these people were people that I just had great admiration for. And yet, I could see some things in the computer that I thought would be great for the game of football. What I didn't realize is that was also the thing that was driving the generation of people that were coming up. And part of my being able to say, you know what, this is part of the society I live in, this is part of the world they're growing up in, I need to know this. I think that was maybe one of the best things that ever happened to me, because I find myself now consciously making decisions all the time, and in that vein that I don't necessarily want to be in their world. That's their world. You're 18 to 21 years old, right? That's such an awesome time. But I want to be able to understand a little bit about what affects their world. And I get reminded all the time. I remember standing with Mac Brown at an NCAA or an AFCA convention, and Mac Brown is texting with his hand down. He's not even looking at the letters. And at that point, I had never texted. Matter of fact, I had a flip phone, and this is it. Now I've drawn the line. I finally reached the stage where I'm going to be the guy sitting on the rocking chair in front of the country store saying, it isn't like it used to be, right? I finally thought I reached that. But then I looked at Mac Brown, a highly successful coach. He was at the University of Texas at the time. And I thought, he's doing that not just to be part of society, but that's also a way that maybe he can connect. And to me, part of relationship is that connecting. So I think we need to understand. We don't need to adopt or to just take their world from them and turn it into our world. But we need to know that cell phone means something to them, and it's like, okay, if I know that, then how can I make that person a better person? How can I get involved? How can that person make me a better person? So.
Well, we've covered trust, care, staying relevant. Coach, do you have any?
I was just going to say, now I understand why all my text messages from Mike were misspelled. Yeah, I still have to look. I tell people that you would agree with this. When we started coaching and really first even found computers, It's 8 digits different. 2, now 10. Every player can do this. Players in our age, we had no reason to type. So I like the phone because I can use my thumbs instead of
He's going 2 at a time, so there you go.
Well, this has been a great conversation. I want to know if, to wrap it up here and finish, if you had one piece of advice, in addition to everything we've said, one piece of advice for our young leaders today, whether they're in coaching, any part of athletics, corporate world, anything, somebody who's in leadership position, one word of advice.
Yeah, the one thing that concerns me a bit about social media is that people feel like they have to brand themselves. My mother was as solid as they came, and when it was time for me to leave home, she told me, and I'm going to use her French, she told me stay small and work hard. She didn't say work hard, she said for me to bust something. But I think I would even just stop short. Just stay small. It's okay to be small. We don't have, really, real swag is no swag. Stay small, it's okay. It's a good life. And I see young people trying to, we're creating stress that doesn't really have to be there.
Coach Kindbom.
If I could tell a quick story and then end it. I had the opportunity to go to Iraq last year to be able to share my faith and run football camps. And it was absolutely awesome. But there was something that was really interesting that, I guess it took me a long time, right, till I was 63 years old before I really saw the importance of it. And I had an interpreter, and because we were talking with people that needed to get a second interpreter, there were times we had to go through 2 interpreters. And I remember asking a very, very serious question to a refugee, and it went through one interpreter to another interpreter to the pensive look of that refugee to an answer, back through an interpreter. It was almost a minute had lapsed. And I was anticipating, everybody was speaking a language except me, what I needed, until the interpreter came back and gave me the answer, and realized that I really had to wait to hear the answer. And, nobody really wants to cut other people off when you ask them questions. You try to learn about them. But so many times, even if we don't cut them off verbally, a lot of times we cut them off in our mind and we're already thinking about the next question. And talk about a learning experience for me. And you asked, because that's fresh on my mind, that listen. Listen more than you speak. And if you really want to learn, listen.
Which is very important. But gentlemen, this has been an excellent conversation. I really appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
It's been fun.
Tonight.
Thank you.
That was Coach David Cutcliffe. He's at Duke, and Coach Larry Kindbom. He's at Washington University of St. Louis. And of course, I'm Ty Brown with AthleticDirectorU. And keep in mind, the role of a leader is to create and maintain an environment that people want to be a part of. And as always, be better tomorrow than you are today.